try and trap some Pokemon.
Absolutely. So let's head on into the game then and have a little bit of a look at this. I'm a little bit excited about this because Weavile, I love Weavile. It's a brilliant ability. It's one we've seen on many Pokemon in the past that have ended up being really, really successful. Weavile was really in vogue, really in play when it first dropped, and it fell off pretty quickly. Players decided they'd rather go a different route. It is not a standard card in Eternatus, not even a little bit. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen and whether this deck can be a little bit better because of it. And bearing in mind, Tord is trying to trap you active. Sure would be nice if you could move your energy around wherever you wanted.
Tord is going to kick off with his favourite starter, the Stellar Wish Jirachi.
He's always got it.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and establish a Type Null. Not much else to help him. The first Stellar Wish, bit of a whiff, really. Not cards you're wanting to see. Really, your priorities are Bird Keepers, Sonias, Capture Energies, Ball Search cards. These are the cards you're trying to find in those openings. Right now, he's got late-game combo pieces galore in his hand. Not much else to help him. For Guillermo, not playing just playing 2 Galarian Zigzagoon and no Scoop Up Net means there's no way they can reach a KO this turn. They're only playing Unified Minesweepers, so even Evil Admonition won't reach. So Tord knows he's got at least a turn of breathing room to Stellar Wish again here. Guillermo looking to get energy drops, of course. And we actually are going to see the Sneasel come into play, as well as a Zigzagoon. That means there's already a Crobat in hand, because the Quick Ball wasn't for Crobat. And no energy drops just yet for them, so that's what they're digging for here.
Absolutely. Remember, with that Weavile, it means it doesn't really matter where you put the energy. You can stash it on a Crobat on the bench and move it to the Eternatus later. We do see a Marnie coming down. It's a really good card against Tord's deck, as we've seen. This maybe not the optimal time to play. Now, Guillermo doesn't know how bad Tord's hand is, of course, but that is a better hand Tord's got now than before, because at least he's got a Bird Keeper as a drawing option.
Yeah, Guillermo would have preferred to hold that Marnie for later stages, but simply didn't have an energy drop. Does find their 1 copy of Capture Energy, is able to go ahead and establish a second Eternatus V on the bench, and is actually going to power Accelerator to the bench here, which is also very nice, especially when there's Weavile in the mix that could throw that back into the active next turn.
No, that's really, really nice. Of course, remember, the Capture Energy cannot be moved with the Weavile, that's his name, because it's not a Darkness Energy, so you've got one there as well. That's a strong opening from Guillermo. If you're playing an Eternatus deck, all you really...
Tord has the option. He has the option.
Oh, no!
To make him to 0.
He has.
Wow.
Oh, and he's going to do it.
He's even got the Chip, so he can control the top deck from Guillermo as well here. I actually would have liked to see the Chip Ice Axe first. You see the Chip first, and then you guarantee that Guillermo can't just top deck out of it, and then you make the choice of the supporter. But here you're saying, get to 0, I'll Chip afterwards. Yep, these are safe cards. These are all allowed. You're allowed to put down a Hooper. You're not afraid of it. You know that the Eternatus can only hit you for 30. Instead, it's going to be a Crushing Hammer by the looks of things. That is a total useless card because there are no current energies in play for Tord. It's much of a muchness here. You deny all Ball Search and Crobat outs if you force the Pokemon into play early with the Hooper. But yeah, Tord's gone and done it. He just had Wheezing Jesse James. Players have to play around this from as early as turn 1. He just got Marnied into that combination, and now Guillermo is just left hitting for 30.
It's what we saw from Robin in the previous match. Robin was always trying to make sure he couldn't get caught with that. And with Reset Stamp, it's not always possible. But like you said, you know, Tord looked and he went, hang on a second, my opponent's got a 3-card hand. I've got Jesse and James and Wheezing and Chip. I wasn't planning on doing it at this stage of the game, but you know what? Arceus apparently wants me to, so let's just do this.
Well, no more Chips for Tord in his hand, just Bird Keepering for the 3 here. Is going to go into, by the looks of things, Silvally GX. It does net him a couple cards if he chooses to use the Pokemon Communication first. There is obviously the risk that Guillermo simply top decks at this stage, gets into any Ball Search cards. See, this is why I kind of like the Hooper being the choice, because if the Hooper then is put into play, it means that it shuts off all Quick Ball outs. It really does depend on how Guillermo wanted to use the Hooper or not. But Tord can go ahed and establish his Zacian V here. The Silvally GX does come into play, so we will see a few additional cards here. And Tord can end on the Intrepid Sword, and really Guillermo's just hoping that the top deck gets them out of this funk.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to think that Guillermo would not have benched that Hooper because you've got to keep the option for Quick Ball open. But it's like we said before, right? you're in top deck mode. And Guillermo's like, yay, I'm in top deck mode. That is not a place you generally want to be. Being in top deck mode is bad. But against Tord's deck, a couple of turns ago, it was, you are definitely not drawing out of it. Now Guillermo has one random card from his deck that could be absolutely anything, and that is his only option. And that is still better than the position he was in a couple of turns ago. And now Tord is getting what he wants. Tord wants time. Tord wants to run through his deck, draw all his cards, set this lock up. That is exactly what we're seeing. And unless Guillermo's ripped something like a Professor's Research, a Quick Ball, a Crobat, something along those lines, he's not going to be doing very much next turn at all.
We are going to see Tord is going to commit the Fighting Energy to the active and simply Intrepid Sword here. Guillermo looking for Great Balls, Quick Balls, Crobat Vs, Professor's Researchers, and Marnies. Let's see if we're going to have an explosive turn here.
Not looking great.
Nothing happening. You have to imagine if it's one of those cards, you instantly play it and grow that hand size back into a safe zone. Right now, not there. So Tord has the time by the looks of things. Yep, just a Power Accelerator from Guillermo. And that's going to mean a few more cards for Tord. There's actually not much he can do in terms of drawing this turn. He can Capture Energy, retreat his Silvally, and go for a Stellar Wish to try and find a Chip Chip Ice Axe. They do have another Jesse James in hand, so Tord can get Guillermo out of range of Quick Ball.
It doesn't need to... It could. I mean, we know the only card in hand is a Crushing Hammer because we just saw an energy being played with Power Accelerator. So we know that that is the only card in hand. So, again, a Quick Ball would absolutely still give him an option. He could get rid of it and then, you know, use the Quick Ball. But, I mean, Tord's in a great position here. I mean, to be honest, Chip Chip Ice Axe would be a nicer card, I would think, at this stage. So it does look like he is going to play it, get rid of that Crushing Hammer. It's not an important card, but we could even see Tord actually start attacking here with Silvally. Because you've got the energy on that you need. So it's whether you want to Intrepid Sword to draw some cards or actually start dealing some damage. They're both actually legitimate options, because bearing in mind, that Drillbur can turn into an Excadrill. An Excadrill loves playing against Eternatus.
I think Tord's deck is still too large to attack here. I feel like I still want a Stellar Wish and Intrepid, and I think Tord is agreeing. It's a tempting option, but if you hit off the Stellar Wish a Chip Chip, you guarantee by a turn, and that's super tempting. And even just getting the additional cards is never a bad thing for you. The only thing you are doing here is giving up a prize guaranteed, because the Eternatus can simply deal with this Jirachi here.
Yeah, I mean... And that gives Guillermo a prize card. And at this stage, when you're really hurting for cards, actually drawing one prize card is fine. We've got a card off the top and we got a prize card. But we do see that Tord still has a Jesse and James in hand. So now that Guillermo has seen a couple of random cards, we might see another Jesse and James coming down here. We could even... I was going to say we could even see potentially some Rototiller action, but I don't know if he's got a way at the moment to actually find that Excadrill.
We could see some Surge Jesse James boss plays that would lower his hand size enough to draw some cards with Silvally. So I think that's kind of the kicker for Tord. He wants to keep drawing if he can. So even though this is, you know, obviously hurting Guillermo's top deck outs, while there isn't any Chip Chips, this gives Tord the option to draw into Chip Chips, which is obviously a big deal. We are going to see Boss's Orders on the Galarian Zigzagoon. Guillermo does not play any Scoop Up Nets. It's only 4 copies of Switch, so... We are also going to see the Ornery Rod. This is a telltale sign that Tord is trying to top up his hand size with Silvally this turn. Wants to take these cards back into his deck so he can draw more with the Silvally GX.
Always a nice option. And I should be clear, we do actually have Rototiller on the Drillbur. It's just for 1 card rather than 4. It is a much weaker Rototiller. But I do need to say that, because we could still see Rototiller.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the guaranteed 3 cards from Zacian is super tempting, but if he has, for example, prized a Chip Chip Ice Axe, sometimes the Rototiller for exactly Chip Chip is more worthwhile. So certainly something to bear in mind here.
Absolutely. Or we could see a retreat into the Lily's Pokédoll to try and buy a turn. We do see the Chip Chip Ice Axe off Silvally.
And Excadrill. He can start smacking if he wants to. He's probably not going to. He wants to start making do here.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better option. I would have loved it personally, but it's definitely not the way to go. Plus, he would then be discarding random cards from his deck, and we've seen how tight Tor's list is. Yeah. And although you can get to 0 and then start rototillering to get them back, early game, just getting rid of too many random cards in a deck like Tor's, that is not where you want to be.
Tor's having a quick look through, seeing if it is safe for them to make do this Drillbur by the looks of things. May have to sort of double check with the prize cards that are available, or if it's worth getting rid of the reset stamp instead. So this could be an indication that an ordinary rod is in the prize cards for Tord, because there's already one ordinary rod in the discard pile. Just wants to make sure he doesn't run out of Drillbur, and it's just going to end on Intrepid Sword. Knowing that Guillermo has got nothing from the top, Tord forced a Eternatus V, I believe it was, into his hand. So Tord gets a free turn here to carry on growing that hand size.
Absolutely, and that's what Tord wants. Just straight back. You know, well, we say we knew there was nothing. I believe it was an Eternatus V that he top decked there, and does not need one of them right now. And now Tord's off. He's got those 2 Cinccino down to draw cards. He's got Silvally. It's that early game draw. Now we see the Excadrill coming up, and Tord at this stage is basically going, well, I can Rototiller, or I can pop a Lily's Pokédoll active. Either way, I know I'm drawing some cards. I know I'm buying some time. And in a couple of turns' time, we are going to see Tord establishing the lock. And the big difference between this game and some of the others that we've seen is Guillermo has not rushed out to 4 or 5 prizes like some of the other matchups Tord has faced. And that is going to make it near impossible to make a comeback in this game.
And Tord, this is probably the most interesting time to make the decision with Rototiller. You either Rototiller back chip, and both Bird Keepers, I think, or you go for the Intrepid Sword. Kind of depends on the number of cards, because he still wants to get to the bottom. Looks like he's going to go for Jesse James and Ordinary Rod instead, so that's also reasonable. It just means it's not the most likely that he draws into a chip next turn. This is a random card for Guillermo, we should add. Could get out of this lock here.
Oh, but again, when you see that pause, it's not looking good. You know, when you see it, you're so excited. You're like, yeah, it was a quick pull. I wonder what he's going to get.
Yeah, we are going to see the Crobat V come down. So Guillermo getting established with a hand. Still needs to find switches. Needs to find a VMAX if they do want to take a KO here. But finally some pressure coming back. Guillermo really needed that draw.
He did, but even now, like with a random card, you need to get your VMAX and your switch off of those 6 cards. Now, he does hit the VMAX, and there are 2 energy there, so it is just a switch needed to get a KO. But honestly, at this stage, it's still not looking great. Now, we do see another quick ball coming down here. So, I mean, remember, you cannot use Crobat's ability twice in one turn. You can get another Crobat, but you can't use the ability. So it looks like we got a Hooper coming down. And to be fair, Hooper does punish having abilities, and there are a bunch of abilities on Tord's side of the board.
Yeah, not enough to deal with Excadrill, but could be used in combination with Boss's Orders to possibly deal with Cincinos, and still could just be used to put into play. Obviously, you can move your energies around when you eventually find your Weavile, so if it is brought into the active, you're not that worried. And we actually see Guillermo use a Boss's Orders here onto Zacian V. I think there weren't any Bird Keepers put back in the deck for Tord with the Palpad, and there is a Galar Mine in play, so this is going to force Tord to discard a lot of energy cards to retreat this Zacian. This could be an interesting way for Guillermo to gain back some time here.
Absolutely. This is an interesting one, and I love that Guillermo's just gone down to a 0-card hand, just been like, look, we know I'm going to have a 0-card hand next turn regardless. I might as well do it myself and get full value. And actually, I like where Guillermo is. He needs a switch, but he's actually got energy on the field. He's got a couple of Eternatus. He's got his Weavile there. And Crobat's not a terrible attacker in this matchup unless Tord gets his attacking Excadrill out, because it can not one-hit KO, but get some KOs on some of these Pokemon. So if Guillermo can start getting some switches, and that is a huge if at this stage, we could see him start actually taking a bunch of prizes here.
Okay, so Tord, he does have his Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star, so that does mean he can retreat out of this Zacian eventually. So just making sure that was the case. Tord wasn't able to find or use any Chip Ice Axe. He actually did draw into one, but chose not to Chip his opponent. Just Intrepid Sworded instead, and now there's a Marnie coming in, so maybe a misstep from Tord there. Potentially worried about the outs he had remaining to actually move out of the Zacian.
Maybe. I mean, we did see that top deck was a Marnie, and although there's no switch yet, we've got a quick ball for presumably, I didn't see it, but I mean, I'm assuming it was a Crobat to draw a couple of cards, because it is just Switch that we need here at this stage. Switch is absolutely huge. Switch gets 2 KOs, puts them down to, there we go, puts them down to 3 prizes remaining. It's still a long way back for Guillermo, but actually, with the quick ball following by the Marnie, we've got some options here.
Yeah, and actually taking the Zacian off the board means it's a long slog back for Tor to re-establish that hand size. Even with Silvally GX in play, it's not the easiest. So let's see if Guillermo can find that switch. It's been elusive so far. It would be a huge miss to not have it again here after a Marnie and a Crobat.
And the Crobat last turn as well. So, yeah. He's drawn a lot of cards and not been able to hit that switch so far. Oh, and he still doesn't have it.
That's a huge break for Tord, to be honest. That could have been a really big swing turn for Guillermo. Surprising that Tord... So Tord misses the Chip last turn. Probably because they were just worried. He was worried about just having the outs to retreat the Zacian. And then Guillermo almost immediately punishes. just misses the switch at the end. So let's see where Tord is going to begin using his make-dos here. Going to get rid of the fighting energy. Does still have 1 ordinary rod remaining in this deck, so that's a free discard, as is the Silvally here. Just one of those wheezing remaining in hand, so Jesse James can't take Guillermo to 0 this turn. No easy way for Tord to move the Zacian out the way. And Tord does have to be a little bit concerned about the crushing hammers that Guillermo has. I believe there's still 1 or 2 in there, so if Tord is trying to attach retreat his Zacian, he has to be super careful.
Absolutely, he really does. It looks like we're just going to see him ending his turn on an Intrepid Sword, drawing a few more cards. Tord's game plan seems to have really slowed down. There's a couple of good top decks from Guillermo, has allowed him to build up his board, and has really seemed to put Tord back a little bit. Having said that, we haven't seen a switch. Maybe if we see a switch 2 turns ago, maybe this game looks completely different at this stage, but as it stands at the moment, that is not what we've seen. So we do see a Pokemon communication here. In theory, there's... Oh, it's an Eternatus V Max. Because Guillermo should have access to 1 more Crobat, assuming it isn't prized.
It depends on what Guillermo's plan is here. Possibly they're thinking that they've just trapped Tord, but because they're going deeper into their deck, that's clearly not the case. They are trying to deal with this Zacian, and they actually do Tord a bit of a favor by replacing this Galar Mine as well. Guillermo's using it, of course, so that they can retreat now and take some prize cards, but I actually think this bails Tord a little bit. I think based on Tord's prize cards, he would have had a tough time of moving this Zacian, unless there's a Pal Pad that's in his deck that we just haven't seen yet. I think this could have been awkward for Tord.
Could have been. And if you know, if you can't get out the active, as long as you can make sure you got more cards left than your opponent, Tord, you know, could have ended up on the back foot there, and you know, almost succumbing to what he's putting his opponents into. As it turns out, we finally see that Eternatus, and now this is a weird one, and you almost kind of wasn't on the bench, because everything else there is workable attacker. Not necessarily great, but workable. Whereas, actually, I'm not loving Galarian Zigzagoon as an attacker, and that's a slight problem here.
And Tord is going to kick things off with that reset stamp. Has the Jesse James wheezing combo, so can take Guillermo to 0. Does have double Chip in hand. Probably wants to make do towards Lieutenant Surge before using this Jesse James, though. Because if you can, you would want to use it with Boss's Orders as well, if that was available. Tord's going to allow Guillermo to have an energy here. Actually, Boss's Order's not doing too much because they can always just retreat out thanks to that Weavile. So we will just see the Jesse James come in first. And Tord might be continuing to sacrifice prizes this turn. Probably puts down a Lily's Pokédoll this turn. We'll see how he wants to play it.
I mean, if he gives up the Excadrill, then Guillermo is a Boss's Orders away from KOing Silvally for game. I mean, this seemed like a very, very bad match when it began. It seemed like Guillermo was not going to get as close as most of Tord's opponents, but actually, we're a couple turns later here, and with just a couple of decent top decks, Guillermo's actually put himself in not a great position, right? It's really hard to have a great position against Tord, but he's put himself in a decent position. So I think you're right. I think Tord has to try and slow down with a Lily's Pokédoll, because if you do let Guillermo have a turn, you do actually end up potentially losing to a Boss's Orders switch combo, or maybe even just to Boss's Orders, depending on what you can and cannot stick in the active.
And Tord allowed Guillermo to have an energy here. That still puts the Umbreon Darkrai out of range, fortunately, because there is a potential Dark Moon GX on the board that can take a KO and deny Tord from using any trainer cards, which is a terrifying proposition when Tord is trying to use his entire deck, basically, of trainer cards. So we've got to keep an eye on the energy count that's in play this entire time. I think right now, Tord's safely out of range. I think Guillermo's top decking into a Dark Energy next turn, I believe.
Yes.
But yeah, it looks like Tord is going to be sacrificing the Excadrill this turn. Guillermo going down to 2 prize cards, and thanks to this Weavile, it's just awkward for Tord to get through, really. The trapping plays are just not the same.
No, I mean, it's something like, unless a Galamine comes out, someone like a Galarian Zigzagoon can be easily retreated, so can Crobat, so can almost anything, and then you just get those 2 energy, and Eternatus does not take much energy at all. And then I think we might be at a stage where a Boss's Orders could give Guillermo a win here. Now, we know he doesn't have the Boss's Orders. He has a 0-card hand, and he is top-decking a Darkness Energy. We are not there yet by any stretch of the imagination. However, at some point, if there's one random draw, maybe. Although we did actually see a Boss's Orders get discarded with Jesse James last turn.
That's definitely something we need to keep an eye on. Guillermo likely just to attach an energy here. It's free to put down, and there's obviously the fear of you losing those cards if you don't use them. So is just going to take that KO, goes down to 2 prize cards. It's a scary count because it allows the full potential of Jesse James combo, but how do you disrupt Guillermo here? I mean, there's so many energies in play. Tord can't really gust things up like his normal game plan is. I think it's a tough ask for him to make a comeback here. I'm not seeing the easy route, to be honest with you. It's going to get funky, I think.
You need to just... Well, it's awkward because what you really want to do is feed him a bunch of Pokédolls, but there's 2 Pokédolls in the deck, and you recover them with Excadrill, but you don't want to really leave an Excadrill in the active. So what exactly do you do at this stage? I mean, you know, he can take him down to a 0-card hand. Disrupting his hand isn't a problem, but he's got to stop Guillermo taking prizes. And like you said, generally speaking, what you can do is gust up a Pokemon from the bench and then put a Galamine in play and basically go, look, you're not actually able at this stage to get out the active. These are the turns I need to really establish a lock. But, I mean, if Guillermo even gets another couple of energy on the board, he could manually retreat something even with Galamine in play and still KO with Eternatus.
Yeah, I think Tord was actually looking for Boss's Orders desperately there. I think the game plan would have been Boss's Orders and just take a knockout on the Weavile, and then next turn he could try and make some Boss's Orders plays again that actually would be doing trapping. So I think it may have been just a miss from the Chinchinos here. Tord being forced to Ordinary Rod back in some Pokemon at this stage, but it's a difficult turn for him, no doubt.
I mean, the Weavile is weak to fighting, just an Excadrill. Should probably know that name by now, with just a single energy, would get a KO on that Weavile. It's a very easy Pokemon to KO, and maybe if we're heading into Game 2 in a minute, if Tord isn't able to bring this back, that may well be something that Tord prioritizes next game. Just, you know what? That Weavile is actually a pretty perfect counter to my deck, because without the Weavile, this game is not this close, not even remotely. That Weavile is what is essentially giving Guillermo a chance in this game, and honestly, giving him a really good chance to win this game. But Tord does not really struggle to knock out the Weavile, so maybe that's where we are.
Here we go. We are seeing the Lily's Pokédoll, the attacking Excadrill, once again coming into the active position. By the looks of things, we might just be seeing an 11th hour tackle.
And it will get a KO here. 360 damage with weakness will be enough, assuming Tord's got 3 or fewer cards in his deck, which he does. I assumed he did. So we do see a KO, and Tord does have an option to prize race here at a different point in the game. I don't think prize racing at this stage is necessarily... Oh no, having said that, there is another Eternatus out, so actually, Boss's Orders next turn... Oh no, but there isn't a backup Excadrill.
Yeah, so next turn, it's promote Pokédoll, reset stamp Jesse James Chip, bench a Drillbur. That's his plan. And then the following turn, you can just make do into the attacking Excadrill once again and take the 3-prize knockout. But we are going to see the Black Lance, which is going to take a KO here for Guillermo. So Tord is going to promote Pokédoll, re-establish a Drillbur, stamp Jesse James Chip, make sure that Guillermo doesn't have exactly Boss's Orders. That's the only thing he loses to. And then he can just make do into the 11th hour tackle once again. That's the route here.
Absolutely, and it's a great route. You know, when you got so few cards left in your deck, you do hit 180 damage for a single energy. It's a brilliant attack. And hitting weakness, you've got the Boss's Orders already in hand. So feed him an Eternatus VMAX doesn't really matter. None of those cards were going to do much, to be honest with you. Like you say, it was only Boss's Orders you're worried about. Jesse and James puts Guillermo down to a 0-card hand. Now, Tord, he does have Ordinary Rod to get that Excadrill back. He's got Boss's Orders. He's got the energy. So once again, we see Tord going, well, you know what? Maybe we can prize race instead.
Surprise, I actually attack. And yeah, I mean, he's just there next turn, right? He can Ordinary Rod and make do guarantee. So he's just got game.
Absolutely. I love seeing Tord play like this. You know, Excadrill, I think hitting fighting weakness is probably the best weakness to hit in the game right now. Because you've got Dedenne, because you've got Crobat, because Pikachu and Zekrom and Eternatus are two of certainly the top 4 or 5 decks in the game right now, depending how you measure it. You are hitting so much good stuff for weakness. And Excadrill is a single prize, stage 1, single energy Pokemon. It's so efficient. And Guillermo sees exactly what's happening, drops a well played. He knows there has got to be a Boss's Orders coming. He knows he's not top decking anything useful. And he knows that Tord can absolutely draw his entire deck. So unfortunately for Guillermo, he came so close. He was 1 prize away, 1 Boss's Orders. Like so many opponents of Tord's we've seen so far, he came so close to winning, but Tord just always seems to have an answer. No matter what you do, Tord will be there with a counter plan.
Tord is sneaky, man. he is so sneaky. I mean, the Weavile basically blocking the whole emphasis of their deck, of his deck, I should say, with the Boss's Orders Galamine tactic. He sort of found out on the fly that that wasn't going to be the route for him and said, well, I guess you put down some 3 prizes. Whoops, there's my route. Can simply use Silvally GX to draw those cards. Also have the make do's to get there. Always get to the bottom of his deck. So in the 11th hour, Tord is able to take the KO here for a 3-prize knockout.
Yeah, doesn't even need Boss's Orders there because, of course, that tag team gives up 3 prizes as well. And, I mean, it's hard at this stage to keep paying compliments to Tord without sounding a little bit redundant. He is just that good. He tried for so long in that game to do what his deck was supposed to do. The Weavile was absolutely frustrating him. It wasn't working. And then in 3 turns, he's like, you know what? I can actually just KO 2 of your Eternatus. Oh, and by the way, that turn in the middle I need to reset, you are completely handlocked.
I actually think Tord got kind of bailed out a little bit there because there was a Zacian that needed to retreat for 4 energy at one point, and Guillermo ended up attacking into it. He ended up replacing the stadium for Tord and attacking. It made sense because Guillermo got very close, obviously, and you're denying that Intrepid Sword draw, but I think Tord was actually in a dicey spot because he didn't spend a turn using Excadrill to get back a Bird Keeper. And these are the margins, you know, he prized his Pal Pad, didn't grab that Bird Keeper, and then he had a kind of couple of chaotic turns. He forgot to use a Chip, got Marnied immediately afterwards. So some scary turns, but then Tord turns on the charm, turns on the style, brings in the attacks, and starts winning that route. That's so cool that he's got this one card in his deck that completely opens up this door of matchups that otherwise he can just be completely lost against. There was no way he could control his opponent from that stage, so he had to race, and able to do it in slow fashion, where you weave in a doll and a reset stamp Jesse James, but doesn't matter. You buy that turn, you go ahead and reset your Excadrill, and that's all you need in this sort of fighting weak meta that we're in.
It was such a good play. And then, you know, like I say, Tord is just, he really is that good a player. So let's head on over to game 2 then. We saw so close from Guillermo there to actually being able to pull out a win. And with that Weavile, there is a route to victory. I think a regular Eternatus VMAX deck, I don't give much chance against Tor's deck at all, because Tor's got both those great ways of winning. But Guillermo's deck, with that Weavile, I think has got such a better chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Weavile just makes it much more difficult for Tor to deal with. But again, the good news is Guillermo uses 3 prize Pokemon to attack with for the most part. And that does open up the attacking door for Tord. So we're actually going to have to think about that the entire time we're going through the series, because we now know it's, again, a viable avenue for Tord. So Guillermo may also be having to think quite differently to how he would normally approach this matchup.
Absolutely. And he started with Galarian Zigzagoon. I believe that's 2 games in a row now he started with that, which is not ideal. It's not really what you want. Tord has, however, started with his Mew that in this matchup, it can help a little bit against Umbreon and Darkrai, but that is about it.
Yeah, you basically just send it out there to be one of those early game prizes while you're protecting the rest of your bench. His hand is actually looking really slow. No capture energies, no ball search in sight, no good draw supporters for him, so it's just going to have to probably bench a couple Pokemon and send it over Guillermo's way. Guillermo has found an early Hooper to energy drop onto, just to draw a few additional cards of Crobat. These energy drops that may start off being a little bit questionable do get much better when you do start seeing Sneasels come into play. And we are going to see a Quick Ball now.
We are, and I am wondering, in this matchup, does Guillermo basically give himself one Eternatus VMAX? And I think you've got to have one, because you need something that can get a one-hit KO on that Silvally GX, on that Zacian. But when you're trying to deal with other weaker Pokemon, maybe Crobat, maybe Hooper, maybe they can take prizes off of Jirachi, off of Mew. Maybe you don't need to put your Eternatus VMAX into harm's way. And certainly, if you only put down 1 free prize Pokemon, it forces Tord to take 3 KOs rather than 2, and that could be a huge difference in the game.
Wow, Guillermo just committed. He said, Tord, you don't have Jesse James in hand. I'm going down to 2. And, well, it's worked out. Guillermo gets to keep their hand. Tord didn't get anything. And hopefully Guillermo can reload here. Yes, we are going to see the attachment to Eternatus, as well as a Professor of Research here. Looking for Switch, looking for that Weavile. Actually, they can take a KO with the Hooper here, I believe. So that's looking pretty reasonable. Weavile is going to shimmy some energies over to Eternatus regardless, which means most likely going to see a switch here. And the first prize being taken by Guillermo.
I like this. You need an aggressive start. This is one thing Guillermo didn't have in Game 1. In Game 1, Guillermo had a very slow start to the game. It took him many turns to start taking prizes, fell a little bit short. We've seen Tord has got a pretty slow start, and Tord still does, right? Tord next turn is basically just Stellar Wish and Hope. Hope you draw something useful off of there. So you know what? If Guillermo can rush a little bit here, that could make a difference. And Chip Chip Isaac's does not do much for you. Neither does Reset Stamp. So Tord's not getting any more Pokemon out. He's not getting a Minccino down. He's not drawing any cards. This is really opening the door for Guillermo to rush ahead. And now Guillermo even gets to take out the Jirachi, which means Tord has fewer options next turn, but does bench another free prize Pokemon.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because we didn't see the full value of Darkrai Umbreon in the previous game, but it can take a really crucial KO. It's a KO where Tord can't use items to respond, so it does open that door for Tord many, many turns down the line to come back in 2 attacks in a row and take those 6 prizes, but there are still some big upsides to Umbreon and Darkrai here. But the good news is Tord gets a capture energy, which at least means he can get a Zacian here to Intrepid Sword for some additional cards, but Guillermo's hand size is large. Tord can't keep it in check too much. Probably can't afford to spend a Reset Stamp here. So it's just going to be hoping that he can dodge a boss's orders here.
Yeah, I mean, a boss's orders onto that Zacian would be just so huge at this point in the game. It's too early for Tord to be down 4 prizes. One of the ways you can beat a deck like Tord's is just absolutely rushing. If it takes them a couple turns to get rolling, and you can just have that faster start, that is all it takes. It's one of the reasons it's a deck I can't play. These are not my kind of decks. I don't have the patience. They make me too nervous. If you have a couple of slow turns at the start, you can absolutely get rushed. And you can come back from 5 prizes down. We've seen Tord do that. But the problem is, those tend to be slower games, not, it's turn 4 and I'm already down 4 prizes.
Yeah, just the nature of Tord's deck, because you don't always take prize cards. You need to have so much redundancy in there. we see 3 copies of Reset Stamp, 3 copies of Chip Chip Isaacs, 2 copies of all the important supporters so that you don't, lose if one's prized. So there's just so much redundancy that it means that his draw supporters are 2 Bird Keepers and a Sonya. So sometimes you just end up with these sorts of hands. You're so reliant on those capture energies, so reliant on those quick balls, because Zacian is your engine at the end of the day. And it does mean that if Guillermo can find Boss's Orders here, only 1 in the discard pile so far, they play 4 copies, it could be a huge swing turn here, because Tord's hand, currently can't even reduce Guillermo to 0 next turn.
No, it is a Marnie.
As well. So there's no Boss's Orders. That's a turn for Tord, at the very least, but it is resetting that hand size back down to 4.
It's not a great hand for Tord. I mean, does have a Drillbur ready to go, but there's no Minccino to evolve up. There's nothing to get any prizes, and if ever there was a matchup where Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star really wasn't going to work, it's this one. You can just move extra energy over and go, there we go, now what? So we're probably just going to see another turn of Intrepid Sword. He's got another basic, but they're not basics that are drawing cards, and do you even want a Sylvali GX at this stage? I suppose you probably have to draw cards, but then you're not hand-locking your opponent. They've got 4 prizes remaining, and 2 Boss's Orders ends the game.
Yeah, Tord is just ducking and diving, basically, giving up prize by prize, again, hoping that he can avoid a Boss's Orders here, because his hand is, again, just pretty weak. No real movement going on there at all. Boss's Orders typically would be a nice stalling tool, but when there's a Weavile GX in the mix, not going to do much. Guillermo can't Boss's Orders for another turn, but Tord is slowly whittling away now. There's still so many cards in Guillermo's hand. Galamine Boss's Orders would be a great panic button option against a lot of other decks, but not in this scenario.
I don't mind the lack of Boss's Orders last turn. Essentially, he's gone, right, 3 KOs rather than 2. There's only 1 2-prize Pokemon out, so it doesn't really matter when you take that 2-prizer, unless Tord can really start playing lots of Pokédolls, but we know he only plays 1, 2, and 1 is in the discard, so doesn't even really need Boss's Orders this turn. He needs it this turn or next turn, but of course, there is always that possibility that Tord is going to hand disrupt, but he hasn't got the pieces in hand as it stands at the moment.
Wow, Guillermo missed, if they had Energy Drop and a switch there, they could just take in a KO with Darkrai Umbreon, and then they couldn't get stamped back, and it would just be boss for game. Wasn't able to get that GX attack off with Umbreon Darkrai. So again, a let off for Tord. He's been drawing really poorly, but Guillermo could have been punishing this even more aggressively if their hand was just slightly better. The first make do from Cinccino coming in. No hand disruption pieces once again for Tord. He's got the Weezings, but not the Jesse James. No reset stamp either. The hand size is monstrous for Guillermo. I'm surprised to see the attachment onto the Drillbur here, rather than onto the active, because now you can't retreat into your Stellar Wish. Again, Tord just having another look through prize cards by the looks of things. Oh, there is a scoop up net, so he could pick up the Cinccino if he wanted to.
Yeah, once you've used the ability, it doesn't really matter because you bench them in Chino and next turn you're just ready to evolve and go. So I kind of like this. You've got the energy on that, and the Drillbur ready to go in the future. Stellar Wish gets... There is a Jesse James, there is a Lily's Pokédoll, but I don't think there's a switch or anything in Tord's hand, is there?
No, not at this stage. So it's going to be putting down the Pokédoll just for next turn, really, and hoping that this Intrepid Sword and next turn's Make Do is going to be enough for him to grab just some lock pieces. May even go into Sylvali, knowing that he's already losing to Boss's Orders on the Zacian, so may as well establish this to protect around more Marnies from Guillermo here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. At this stage, when Guillermo's got 4 prizes remaining, you really don't want 2 2-prize Pokemon. When he's down to 2 prizes and you've already got a 2-prize Pokemon, it makes absolutely no difference, except it's got a brilliant ability that lets you draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. Doesn't see a huge amount of play. It's one of those ones I always expected to see more play, but it's ended up very much as a fringe card when we've seen similar cards in the past really be staples in decks.
Yeah, I mean, it's had some highlight reel moments in the likes of Scorch and Tord showing off what it can do here, but there's just been so much aggressive gusting decks in the format that giving up those 2 prizes, that especially against the ADP Zacian decks, is a 3-prize liability. You can't always afford to have it in play, and the game's got so fast that you can't afford to have those prizes waiting in the wings quite as much as you used to. You need the instant access from Crobat and Dedenne much more often to have answers on this very turn. But typically it's just a nice stamp proofing card, but Tord uses it as the main backbone of his engine when he gets to that late game. Does reset stamp. This is going to be big. He needs to just have a cool-off turn where there's no boss's orders.
Yeah, because that even the Gala Mind Play doesn't really do much. You can literally afford to pay free energy to retreat that Zigzagoon and still be able to attack. So Boss's Orders will still end the game here. He's got free cards in hand. There's potentially a Crobat play coming. If he's got a Crobat or a ball card to search out the Crobat. Only played one Boss's Orders so far, so there should be free in the deck. Only played 2 Crobat, but it's a switch. So it's a crushing hammer.
Yeah, still no energy because
a Crobat for 6. Oh, do we see the Boss's Orders off this Crobat for 6? Yes, we do! And we finally see Tord lose a game. Guillermo is able to KO the Silvally GX and even up the series at 1 game apiece, showing that sometimes a deck like Eternatus is so gosh darn fast, it can just rush even a deck like Tord's.
Yeah, and again, this wouldn't be the case if there wasn't a Weavile GX in Guillermo's deck. It allowed Guillermo to make these decisions knowing that he's not worried about half of Tord's incentive. Half of Tord's deck is based around, I'll eventually stick something and then I'll have all the time in the world. Weavile just says, nope, I guess I'll move him over here and start hitting you with this guy instead now. And Guillermo took that one risk on, I think it was turn 2, and just said, I'll go to a 2-card hand, I don't mind. They're never going to have one of their 3 copies of Jesse James. And, well, sometimes they don't. And Tord really didn't have much at all. No quick balls, no capture energies. Just wasn't getting going at all in that opening. And Guillermo was just able to pound through, take so many prizes that Tord was never able to get low enough in his deck. I think he ended up that game at still like over 25 cards. And you're not going to get the job done when you need to cherry pick so many cards at once with that many still remaining in your deck.
And I think when you're playing against a deck like Tord's, I think you have to go for those aggressive plays. You have to do those plays where usually you're like, 2 cards in hand, Jesse and James, is it worth it? Guillermo's like, look, I'm in losers. I'm already down a game. If I lose this game, I am out. I know that I don't match up brilliantly against Tord's deck. Weavile gives me a chance, but I know I have got to rush for early prizes. So you know what? Maybe this isn't the best play ever. Maybe it's a risky play, but if I don't make the risky play, I'm going to lose anyway. So, I mean, I might as well, but even that could have gone either way. And we do need to point out, Tord did not have the luck of the draw in that game.
No, exactly. I mean, like we say, Guillermo missed Boss's Orders for a number of turns that could have just completely won the game many turns earlier because Zacian would have been out of the equation, but the Intrepid Sword wasn't even helping Tord. It was getting him more late game pieces, still none of the ball search, still none of the communications to get Pokemon established so that he could use Make Do. The one Make Do Chinchino that he made, he had to scoop up Nesset back up so that he could then use a Jirachi for a turn. So never really got that hand established, so that's still the name of the game. Tord needs to race to the bottom if he's going to win. And like we say, he still has to go the unconventional prize race route, I think, because Weavile's proving way too difficult to deal with. We haven't even seen the All-Star yet, the Umbreon Darkrai. If we get to that 6 energy range, that's another huge win condition. So always something to keep in the back of your mind.
Absolutely. Well, we are 1 game each, so let's head on over to game 3 then. See which of these players is going to be carrying on through the losers bracket. Remember, it is losers round 12 that you win to get you into the global finals. So even a win here would not put either of these players into global finals. They would still be 1 win away, but the loser of this is definitely not making global finals. So this is a very, very important game indeed.
Tord gets to go first. Already has Stellar Wish and Zacian, so much better than last time. He's going to get rolling at the very least. Also is able to find a Lily's Pokédoll, so a couple good early cards to throw into play, and can quite happily end on Intrepid Sword here by the looks of things.
I mean, it's different to the last game. Last game, Tord did not have what he wanted at all. Oh, I quite like the early game Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star here. It turns off things like a Power Heater, and obviously in a Weavile deck, getting extra energy in play early is so much better than in other deck builds, and it potentially means that it's free energy or free turns before Eternatus gets rolling. And we saw that it was rushing that really won Guillermo game 2, so I kind of like this really early Wondrous Labyrinth here.
Yeah, Guillermo only plays 1 copy of Celtic Swell as the stadium removal, so this could be an easy ride for Tor to have some additional turns here. We saw how Power Accelerator just allowed Guillermo to slowly just hit for 30, hit for 30, hit for 30, and the prizes start coming onto the Jirachi. Here, Tord's saying, none of that, please. I don't want to be dealing with it. Let's buy myself some time in the... Oh, wow, already Chaotic Swell being found for Guillermo. Not bad. And is able to carry on. A couple of Crushing Hammers going into the discard pile. We do see a Sneasel developed here, and probably a Crobat as well coming throughout this turn.
Yeah, you've got to think there's a Crobat coming at some point. I mean, that Sneasel, getting that established really early on is absolutely key. So maybe there is a game where you would get that out and forego having a Crobat, but you don't have the energy drop yet. The energy drop is crucial, and there's another quick ball. This one is got to be the one to get the Crobat. Oh, no. So he's got to have a Crobat
already there.
This stage.
Yeah.
Got to be there.
It absolutely has to be there. Looking for energy attachment by the looks of things. Once again, Guillermo is having to dig deep towards those sorts of outs here. If they are able to launch a Power Accelerator, could be really helpful. But no energy drop. That's a huge break for Tord.
Yeah, completely whiffs there. I mean, he's playing 10 energy in his deck. You would think that after, I believe it was Professor's Research and a Crobat for 4, you would think you would hit one.
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so. Tord is going to have a look through their prize cards now. Looks like Type Null's in there. They've got access to plenty of their Chinchino. Looks like attacking Excadrill, unless it's in their hand, they can't... Oh, it is.
It is in hand.
So he can take some aggressive prize cards. That's good news. We do see some Chips, Power Pads in here. That's always a great one that you never really liked prizing. Scoop Up Nets are one of. Tord definitely taking his time here. Looks like a Bird Keeper's in the prize cards. I'm trying to run through the deck list as Tord does, because it's certainly something that you want to do. And it's interesting that, Tord was way more methodical this search than he was last game. You could almost see the panic in his deck search, because he was thinking about all the other things at once, of how he was trying to get out of this and see what outs he had remaining to draw out. Whereas here, he's going through much more slowly, figuring out his prize cards, knowing that he can end on Stellar Wish Intrepid Sword, and just has time this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. Much better start. Much more confident. And seeing your opponent whiff an energy, it means that Guillermo is basically not getting a KO this turn, which is one more turn before Guillermo starts taking prizes, one more turn for Tord to set up to get that handlock going. So, things really didn't go Tord's way last game on both sides of the board. And we're seeing kind of a reversal here. We've got a Minccino down. We've got a Type Null coming down, which will turn into a Silvally GX, you would imagine. Silvally is actually in hand at the moment, so that is an easy evolution next turn. And there is a lot of options already. So, yeah, I quite like where Tord is here. He's going to be able to end the turn on an Intrepid Sword, knowing that he's got much better options. Although I'm not loving those 3 cards. He still needs some way to draw next turn, because Silvally ain't going to do it. He's got too many cards in hand.
Yeah, Silvally is really just the safety net against the Marnies. Guillermo is playing 3 copies, so wants to be something that you want to establish pretty early. Guillermo has a number of Pokemon here that they can put into play. Does find that VMAX. Obviously no attack coming in this turn, but Crobat is going to top up again. Still looking for energy cards by the looks of things. But yeah, anytime Tord's hand size is looking kind of like this, you really want to try and use your Marnies if you are able to. You can see a Crushing Hammer pretty early.
Yeah, Professor's Research.
Heads. Yeah.
New hand of 7. Yeah, Weavile out. Weavile is good. We do finally see there is an energy on the board. We actually see switching into Umbreon and Darkrai here and using Dark Moon GX. Now, it's not going to do any damage, but it does stop Tord doing anything next turn.
It's a really strange one. I'm not a huge fan of this, because I know it can be such an insane late game win condition for Guillermo. In the first 2 games, it's never been online. Guillermo's just not had enough energies in play to actually pull off this GX attack. The only thing it does do is say, Tord, draw all the cards you want this turn. I'm just going to money you next turn instead. That's kind of the telltale sign that I'm seeing here. Because Tord will be just establishing more here, Stellar Wishing, possibly just ending on Intrepid Sword because there's no other actions going on this turn. But basically it's saying Guillermo is going to have a free Marnie, basically.
Yeah, I love this. I really like it. And don't get me wrong, I think the late game point is absolutely a valid one, but we're in game 3. Guillermo has had 2 games in which he could have used that late game GX attack, never got it on the board. He whiffed an energy attachment, he wasn't getting the attack he wanted, and that all really adds up to, you know what, I wouldn't usually do this, but it's the only attack I've got, and I never get this going in the late game anyway, so let's just slow him down for a turn.
And there is, Tord has put a Sylvali GX in play, so you can actually just use Umbreon and Darkrai's regular attack to just start putting damage on the bench as well. Of course, this turn, looking for a switch out so they can take a prize with Eternatus by the looks of things, as we are going to see communication into a second Weavile GX.
Love it.
So that can come into play. It means that Tord can't really just deal with one of them with a KO and then, start using Galamine and Boss's Orders. It means they're pretty much just sat there the whole game. Crobat here for a huge hand. Try and look for those switch outs.
Yeah, if you're going to Gust and KO too, and there is the money we all expected, if you are going to Gust and KO for weakness twice, you aren't going for Weavile, you're going for free prize Pokemon to win the game. So essentially, putting down that second Weavile makes it absolutely pointless trying to go after it, and it guarantees those Weavile are going to be out for the game. We knew that was an option for Tord. It isn't an option for Tord anymore. So Tord needs to make that decision of, is it really worth trying to rush like I have done, like I did in game 1? Do I want to try getting the lock going? And on the one hand, he won with prizes game 1, but that's not really that simple because the lock really wasn't there in game 2. Game 2 went very badly, so Tord's going through his game now, and this is an awkward one. He knows this is not as good a matchup as it would be were it a regular Eternatus deck, and now does he go for the prize racing, which is an option? Does he go for the hand disruption like we've been seeing all the way along? It's not as easy as it is in a lot of matchups for Tord, put it that way.
Yeah, I think the difference this time is there's still a nice 6 prize card buffer as it lies. So really hoping that this extra time that he's being granted, even though he has just already been manied back down to a lower hand size, he's really just hoping that he can just have enough turns to re-establish, get himself into that healthy range. I still feel like where the prizes are now, Tord will try and be attacking eventually if he can get to that low deck size at the end of it all. Because that seems to be the best route. It's really, really difficult to control Guillermo when there are these 2 Weavile developed and nothing like a power plant to stop them.
And I think the way you put it there is wonderful. He will probably be attacking eventually at some point later in the game. It's, I said Tord's got these 2 routes to victory. That's not a decision that needs to be made now. What Tord can do now is keep doing his thing, try and get a bit of disruption, try and build up his board, go through his deck and race to the bottom as you keep putting it, which I think is an excellent way to phrase it, and make that decision later. But now we see the attack with Umbreon and Darkrai, that 60 residual damage onto the Sylvali. Okay, fine, it's going to take a few turns to add up, but actually it means 4 attacks will win the game, even without any kind of gusting.
Yeah, it's really scary for Tord because it's a bench space being eaten up by a Mew, essentially, at some point. That's all it's really saying. And Tord really values bench space. It's super important. It could end up Tord having to use a scoop up net on a Chinchino later down the line. Again, you probably allow the Sylvali to take a few hits until it's only 60 damage away from being KO'd, or 1 attack away from being KO'd, I should say. But you probably need this Mew for the late stages because, again, I don't think you're going to stop attacking, but he's discarding the Mew here. He's saying the board space is more valuable and that he can outrace the Black Lance by the looks of things.
It might be one of those, we know he's playing a couple of Super Rod. It might be as simple as, I'm fairly sure I can get it back if I need it. Like, attack it 3 times on the bench, then we'll have a chat about Mew. We're okay for now.
It could even be a bait from Tord, realistically. It could mean that Guillermo then doesn't use Boss's Orders on the Sylvali. It means it stays in play for longer, and then Tord, once he's at the bottom of his deck, goes, haha, I did actually want this Mew all along. So this is actually, could easily be a bait from Tord, just saying, well, I guess that means Sylvali's staying for a few turns. It's not going to be targeted if he's just going to try and snipe it down.
No, and I think that's an excellent plan. And, we know that top players, they will do stuff like this. You'd use everything in your arsenal. Sometimes you will make a particular play to try and, get your opponent to do something that isn't in their best interest that you can then punish later. And Tord's deck is a deck of punishment. It is a deck which is built to try and take advantage of every tiny little misplay your opponent makes. And, yeah, I think that absolutely could be the reason we saw the Mew get discarded there.
We could be seeing a Lily's Pokédoll get sent to the bottom here. Depends on how easy Tord thinks it is to win with the prize game plan. He only needs one Pokédoll to be able to do it. So it means next turn he's probably just promoting the Chinchino with the energy attachment, but maybe ending with the Minchino in the active next turn as the sacrificial lamb.
Quite possibly. There's no Drilber down at the moment, so, you know, he's got... Oh, there is a boss's orders. So actually, we do see that Silvally going down straight away, not going to KO it with any kind of residual bench damage, going straight after it. And now we are potentially 2 attacks away from Guillermo winning the series and sending Tord out of the tournament. We're going to need probably at least a boss's orders onto that Zacian, but there's some left in deck.
Yeah, Tord has plenty of draws here. He's actually going to start with a Make Do. He possibly could have calmed back the Drilber just for guaranteed wheezing, and then he could have capture energy out the Drilber. He still could make that play before using any more Make Do's here. I feel like it's a solid route because you can stamp Jesse James and wheezing once to get Guillermo to 0 here.
Absolutely, and there is a Chip Ice Axe in hand to fix that top deck as well. And you got the Lily's Pokédoll out to essentially buy yourself a turn because the boss's orders essentially completely ignored it. So this is what Tord can do. Tord can basically just ignore for a turn, and then it could be as simple as take a prize this turn, take a prize next turn. Oh, look. I mean, it depends how low he can get in his deck, of course. Oh, I think 16 cards in deck. We're a little way away from that yet. It's going to be a couple of turns before Tord can get down to, you know, the 11th hour, so to speak. But it's certainly an option.
Looks like Tord not wanting to go for wheezing plays here, even got rid of the communication, so we know that that's not even something that he's looking for. Possibly just going to send a reset stamp out there now, and maybe even Birdkeep just for some additional cards. We are going to see the Chip, though. Possibly just Surge double Jesse James. There may even be Wheezing's prize that we're not aware of.
Potentially there could be. I mean, Eternatus VMAX doesn't really do anything for Guillermo. He's already got one out, so feed him one of those. That's not going to help him at all. You don't give him the Great Ball because that could potentially turn into a Crobat down the line. I mean, admittedly, he can't play it now, but it's just something you never want to give your opponent. So we do see Surge coming down. We do see Jesse and James. There isn't a Wheezing, but there is a possibility of playing a second Jesse and James off Lieutenant Surge, which you've got to imagine is going to happen, which means Guillermo next turn is attacking into a Lily's Pokédoll, and his hand is Eternatus VMAX.
Yeah, not the best. It means they're forced to attack through the Pokédoll, essentially, for a free turn for Tord. It must be that the Weezing's surprised, because otherwise it's a clear play that you would prefer. You would rather draw 3 additional cards with Birdkeeper, and you'd also rather keep the resources available. Even gets rid of the second Lily's Pokédoll here, which is kind of scary for you, because you do want one of them to be stuck around for you to try and do the Excadrill into the Stamp play, into the Excadrill attacking route that we have seen. So might be shutting the door on that for themselves here. I'm just going to be Jesse Jamesing 2 times over, and could be ending on an Intrepid Sword here.
I think that's absolutely going to be the route. So working towards attacking twice to win the game using Excadrill. We got another Drillbur in hand. We've got that attacking Excadrill ready to go. Needs an energy at some point in the not too distant future. But I mean, the hand lock, we haven't really seen it work this entire series. We've seen the odd turn or two as the Lily's Pokédoll goes down, where Guillermo's been a little bit stuck. But the fact of the matter is that because you can always just burn energy to retreat, there are only 4 energy, I think, on the field for Guillermo. So that is slightly awkward, but it's not, we are not in panic stations yet by any stretch of the imagination.
Tord does pick up his next Chip, which is certainly important for blocking Guillermo's plays for the most part. Can obviously give up still one Chinchino fairly comfortably and just develop double Drillbur. Could even try and get another Type Null down at some point this turn. Has got the option to Stellar Wish now if he wants to go basically to the entirety of the bottom of his deck here. And yeah, it looks like he's getting to that point where you love to be as this deck. You're at the bottom, and that's the best place you want to be for this deck. You do have access to attacking with Excadrill here. Do you have enough Minchino to actually get to the bottom of your deck to actually take the KO here?
I mean, that's the question, because right now we know that Guillermo's hand next turn is going to be an Eternatus and an Eternatus VMAX, neither of which helps. So if you can get...
does it. Wow. Yeah.
There we go. And the thing is, Guillermo's going to be down to 1 energy. Guillermo can't attack next turn. Or not with any attack that we care about. The attack is not going to be relevant next turn. Tord has got boss's orders, so actually, I'm pretty sure Tord just wins the game next turn.
Tord has game. Yep. He's got to the bottom. It's the 11th hour. There's 2 3-prize Pokemon in play. Guillermo having the Darkrai Umbreon knocked out means there's still that VMAX available for Tord to simply boss's orders. And he's got there. He's just done it. 2 chip tips in a row is all it takes to deny those, any attack coming down. So it's simply a pass, boss's orders, shake the hands, we're there.
Absolutely it is. Tord gets the KO on Eternatus VMAX using 11th hour tackle on that Excadrill, and Tord wins the match 2-1. Slightly closer, slightly a bit more nervous, I think, than Tord would generally be expecting Eternatus VMAX to be. That is a matchup that Tord does not mind playing, but we saw both the games where he won was one with attacking, was one with taking prizes, because actually, I've been trying to tell people this for well over a year, that Excadrill is a really good attacker.
Ross has promised me this many times. I can confirm that. But yeah.